Good morning, friends. This is another edition of the Parcells Show. Brought to you by JohnPielli.com, by St. Aloysius Church and School in Jackson, New Jersey, by Two Ways, One Passion Food Truck located in Scranton, Pennsylvania. As always, a handful of stuff we're going to get into in a world of baseball, sports, and unifying America. Next show we do on Saturday may be an outdoor show, it may be a remote location show. We're going to get a little renovations done to the studio here, and it should be fun. We'll be outside talking. We'll bring back the NFL picks for the playoffs, and there's a couple interesting things and a couple interesting angles I'm looking forward to looking in there. As the NFL season just finished, perhaps if you're a fan of either the Eagles or the Giants or any team in the NFC East, you took a lot out of the way the fourth quarter was played between the Eagles and the Washington football team. Now, I didn't have as much of an issue with going to Nate Sudfeld as the quarterback. Now, a lot of people basically equate that to the Eagles quitting, or Coach Doug Peterson saying, you know what, I just want to lose, perhaps because of the draft pick situation, that a loss put them in a sixth position as opposed to ninth. Maybe they want to stick it to the New York Football Giants. They say, hey, you know what, screw them. What are we going to do to help the Giants? And I don't think any of that was true. So that's the first point that I want to get here, because a lot of the perception is centered around a tanking effort or Coach Doug Peterson and the Philadelphia Eagles not trying to win a football game. Now, and you hear it. The rhetoric is everywhere that the Eagles didn't try to win the football game. Now, the argument can be made legitimately, do the Eagles have a better chance of winning with Jalen Hurts as their quarterback or Nate Sudfeld as their quarterback? And the answer, probably 99 times out of 100, is going to be Jalen Hurts. Now, you could question the way Sudfeld was used. Perhaps if he was brought in the first quarter, maybe he played the first couple series. Maybe he played in the second quarter. Maybe he started the second half or something like that. Maybe the timing of the use of Nate Sudfeld makes this situation look a lot worse than it really is. And I do feel a little bit for the Eagles players that may have got a little bit of a misconception. They maybe were given some false information. Maybe they come off that field, the veteran players in that Philadelphia Eagles locker room come out of this game feeling like the coach didn't really care if the team won or lost. And that's a lot to put on one person. And I'm not talking about Doug Peterson, I'm talking about Nate Sudfeld. Now, you could knock Nate Sudfeld because I think it's an easy thing to do right now. It's kind of the popular take. If you want to just rip Nate Sudfeld, say, hey, he's not an NFL quarterback. There's a reason that he hasn't played in 2 years. And if he was good enough to be a regular quarterback, he would have gotten some PT sometime during this season before the last game. Now, I do believe in having some sort of respect, which Doug Peterson has for Nate Sudfeld. And like I said, the circumstances, the way they worked out, made this situation look a lot worse than it really was. If you're a Giants fan, you're bitter because you feel like the Eagles lost the game on purpose. But I don't think that's what happened. And for those that knock the Giants and say, well, you're 6-10, you maybe won one more game. Maybe it doesn't come down to the football team having to lose to the Eagles in a Sunday night setting. While that's true, every last one of us understood the NFC East this whole year. That's all we've been talking about. We've been talking about how bad the NFC East has been. So to throw the Giants' record in there and say, hey, you got to win more than 6 games if you want to make the playoffs, I don't necessarily buy that. But I'm not going full circle, because I don't believe that the Philadelphia Eagles lost the game on purpose. It was a poor tactical decision by the head coach to bring in a quarterback that hasn't played in over 2 years to play in the fourth quarter of a close game. Now, that did not look good. Now, if Nate Sudfeld went in there, threw 2 touchdowns, and the Eagles end up winning this game, nobody's talking about going to Nate Sudfeld in the fourth quarter. In fact, probably if you're a Philadelphia, fan, if you're a Philadelphia analyst, host, you're probably talking about Nate Sudfeld coming back to the Eagles next year. Odds are that probably won't happen. But odds are that was the reason that Doug Peterson put him in the game in the first place. You know, Jalen Hurts was drafted in the second round of the draft last year, not to be a gadget player. And everybody understood that. Some people thought, hey, you bring in a player, you know, Jalen Hurts can line up as a wide receiver. He could be a little slash. And they worked in a couple plays, Doug Peterson did for the Eagles and Jalen Hurts during the regular season. But the real reason he was drafted was going to be to push Carson Wentz. And Carson Wentz in 2019 was coming off of a decent season. Not a great season, not an MVP type of season, but certainly a much better performance out of Carson Wentz in 2019 and in 2020. So Hurts was brought in to push Wentz. And unfortunately, Carson Wentz has not performed this year. And that's why Jalen Hurts is in there. Now, should I blame a coach for wanting to see what he has in his other quarterback? Yes, I think he could have done it better. I think he could have played Nate Sudfeld at numerous other times as they're getting into the season. This was the first official week that the Eagles were not playing for a playoff position. And I would have done one of two things. The first one I just said, I would have gotten Sudfeld in a game within the last 2 or 3 weeks. Or I would have started Sudfeld in this last game against the Washington football team. Now, maybe it sends a worse message. Maybe if Sudfeld goes out there and ends up playing the entire game and throws 4 interceptions and the football team ends up winning a game 35-3, maybe people are more pissed off. But the point was for the Eagles to get a little bit of a look at Nate Sudfeld. Now, I don't believe that Peterson was looking at him as far as seeing if he had his quarterback in the future. I think he sees that in practice. I think he's seen that over the course of the season when Nate Sudfeld is running the scout team. Maybe he thinks that he's got a little talent. Maybe he thinks that he could hook on somewhere else if another team just got to see him a little bit. But if he thought he could play, I think he would have gotten in a game this year at some point. He would have gotten in a little more of a game than he did last season, if he believed in the guy. Because if there's one person that knows about Nate Sudfeld, that's head coach Doug Peterson. Here's a guy that's been his coach while he's been on the sideline and in practice with him. There's not anybody that's going to know any more about Nate Sudfeld and what to expect for him on the football field than Doug Peterson. And that's why I'm going to close this point by saying I really think Doug Peterson believed in Nate Sudfeld. Now, was the performance there? No. Did he make some mistakes? Yes. Did this game end up kind of falling away from the Eagles as far as them having a chance to win? Yes. But I don't think Doug Peterson was expecting Nate Sudfeld to go in and have such a drop-off. So, in conclusion, we're looking at probably the worst case of a scenario. A coach trying to get a third-string quarterback in there to play a little bit because he respects him and he feels like he owes it to him. In a game that means nothing. Remember, the Eagles are not playing for a playoff spot. The Eagles are not playing for the Washington football team. The Eagles are not playing for the New York football Giants. The Eagles have nothing to play for. Now, I've said weeks ago that there's no such thing as tanking in the National Football League. Nobody does it. Players on the field don't do it. And that's why if there's even an iota of a thought that maybe there could be some compromise in the effort that's being put to win a football game, there's going to be some players that are pissed off. And there were. I don't believe it was true, though. I believe it's just a scenario that could not have worked out any worse. If you're a Giants fan and you're upset, I get it. I understand. You're counting on a team in your division to lose so you could win a tiebreaker at 6-10 and get to the playoffs. And I was rooting for that. I wasn't rooting for that because I'm a Giants fan. I was rooting for it because it's something that in the history of football we've never seen before. We're talking about 4 teams in the history of the National Football League that made the playoffs with a losing record. The Washington football team becomes the 5th. Two teams had a record of 4-5, and one team had a record of 7-8-1, and another one had a record of 7-9. There's never been a team to make the postseason with a record of 6-10 or with a record 4 games under 500. And that, my friends, is what I was rooting for. So you think about Black Monday as it applies to the NFL, and kind of a little quiet for a change. Usually Black Monday involves multiple head coaches losing their job, usually at least 4, sometimes 5 or more. This year, it was only officially 3. Adam Gase, who we knew was probably not coming back to the New York Jets. Doug Marrone, who led the Jacksonville Jaguars to the worst record in the National Football League. And a little bit of a surprise with Anthony Lynn losing his job with the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers won their last 4 games. They got their quarterback of the future in Justin Herbert. I think there is some growing optimism in Los Angeles with the Chargers. They're going to be looking for a new coach. Now, some points during this football season, it looked like maybe Anthony Lynn may have lost that locker room, may have lost that sideline. But when you go out there and you win your last 4 games and finish 7-9, I think it's an effort that it shows the effort is there as far as the team going out there and competing. But what I believe this is like a Johnny Keane St. Louis Cardinals situation. And for those that don't know who Johnny Keane is, he was the manager of the St. Louis Cardinals in 1964, where the Bush family, who owned the St. Louis Cardinals, had decided mid-season that they were going to replace Johnny Keane after the 1964 baseball season. Now, what happened is the St. Louis Cardinals went on a run in the last month of the season, and because of a historical collapse by the Philadelphia Phillies, who are up by 7 games with 17 games left to play, the Cardinals ended up winning the National League pennant. They rode that momentum into the World Series against the New York Yankees, and they won the World Series. So Johnny Keane, where a decision had been made by ownership that he was going to be gone after the season, ends up leading the Cardinals to a World Series type of victory and kind of puts the Cardinals in a tough spot. Well, Johnny Keane gets word of it, says, you know what, I don't want to come back. He ends up going to the New York Yankees. Things kind of go downhill from there. Well, Anthony Lynn, maybe. You look at ownership, you look at the front office of Los Angeles Chargers, maybe the decision was made that Anthony Lynn was not going to come back. They go out there, they win their last 4 games. Yes, he made the decision a little tougher for them, but when it comes down to it, they stuck by their guns and let Anthony Lynn go. Now, you hear about the prospects of Urban Meyer getting back into coaching. And Urban Meyer, as a college football coach, is an all-time great. I don't think it's crazy to put him, like I have, in the top 10 amongst college football head coaches ever. And that's with the Newt Rockneys of the world and Bear Bryant's. Urban Meyer is up there in the top 10. He has done a great job everywhere he's been, most notably in Florida, and his last home as the head coach of the Ohio State Buckeyes. He won a national championship there. That team's credibility and credibility to the school was instantly boosted when Urban Meyer became the head coach there. Number one, would Urban Meyer want to coach in the National Football League? It's a different game. Ask Nick Saban. Ask, Bobby Petrino. Ask any one of a number of college head coaches that have gone in the National Football League and failed. And sometimes it's just because it's a different game. The recruiting aspect, there are coaches that love that element. You can't do that in the National Football League. You're playing with professionals. It's almost like you're not the king anymore. A college football coach is the king of the campus. There's no player, whether it's the Heisman Trophy winner, whether it's the best player on a team that's winning the national championship, there's no player that takes more of the mantle than the head football coach of a college team. The NFL is different. The players make more in many cases than a head coach. If Urban Meyer is going to go to the National Football League and get $12 million a year, there's a chance 3 years down the road, 4 years down the road, 5 years down the road, assuming that the Jacksonville Jaguars draft Trevor Lawrence, that Trevor Lawrence is going to be making $30, $40 million a year. So you're talking about over 3 times the amount of what Urban Meyer would make if he was the head football coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I think that changes the dynamics of the so-called, system and a roll call and whatever you would constitute in regards to the chain of command. I'm not saying that Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes and the likes are making decisions over the head coach or take precedence over the head coach. But I tell you, the quarterback in the National Football League has a lot of power. Certainly a lot more power than that of even the best all time of the college football quarterback. So Urban Meyer, I believe, can be an NFL head coach. I think he could do a good job. I think he certainly knows what he's doing. And if that's what he decides to do at this point of his career, I don't really have a problem with it. But I think it's going to be a challenge. And number 2, the most important thing when I think of Urban Meyer is I think about his health, and I wonder why he walked away from Florida when he had a great program there, was one of the best in the country, one of the best consistent recruiters throughout the country. And then he goes and builds up the Ohio State program to do the same thing, and he walks away again. Now, I believe that a coach wants to coach. And I always go to Bill Parcells when it comes to this. Bill Parcells coached the Giants, and to me, inexplicably, after winning the Super Bowl in 1991, walked away as a head football coach of the Giants. A couple years go by. He ends up taking a job in New England. Goes there for a couple years. Ends up walking away. Picks up a job as the head football coach of the Jets. Walks away. Ends up coming back. He goes to Dallas. I don't know if he necessarily walked away or was forced out. Kind of a unique scenario because you got to deal with the likes of Jerry Jones. So maybe that's different. But I think of Bill Parcells one way. He's a born coach. He's a born leader. And that's what a coach is meant to do. Bill Parcells may get tired of a certain stop or a certain organization or a certain team that he's representing and may need a break. But when he sits on his couch, when he watches preseason football, when he observes the National Football League season going by without him on the sidelines, he gets antsy. He starts thinking about, listen, I'm a coach and I'm meant to coach. And I think of the same thing when I think of Urban Meyer. When Urban Meyer left Ohio State, I didn't have any doubt that he was going to get another job. Obviously, there's somebody that's going to hire him. You look at his track record, it goes right up against anybody else that's out there. And you know what? Most of the candidates that we throw out there aren't real candidates. In other words, they're college football coaches like Ryan Day, who doesn't want to leave Ohio State. They're, coaching candidates like Bill Cowher, who doesn't want to leave, the CBS studios. So they're basically candidates that we're making up in like a fantasy world that aren't ever going to want to take the job in the first place. Urban Meyer is an interesting candidate. I'd have to know that he's 100% committed to this. And is it just about the money? I don't think it's about the money. You can pay him $10 million, you can pay him $12 million, whatever it is, he's going to be paid handsomely. He'll get whatever length of a contract that he wants, and he'll probably get it all guaranteed. What I would want to know if I'm Jacksonville is, am I going to get a commitment that Urban Meyer, if I sign him to a 5-year contract, he's going to be here for 5 years? He's not going to coach for a couple years, realize that, hey, maybe I don't want to be in the NFL, maybe I want to go back to college, or maybe I'm just bored of the whole thing altogether. If he gets a couple ulcers and, kind of feeling sick, oh, I'm not feeling well, maybe I should step aside because of my health, then I think that's another thing he needs to consider. I'm a little fishy about throwing Urban Meyer out there as a legitimate candidate for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm not saying he won't take it. I'm not saying that he won't be a head football coach again. I just have a hard time believing from a health standpoint that this is something he's going to commit himself to. Is he sure he wants to be an NFL head coach? And is this going to be a mistake? After 2 years, he's going to decide, hey, I didn't want to do this in the first place. Hey, it's a great opportunity. I'll tell you this. There's 6 vacancies amongst head coaches in the NFL. If I'm picking one, it's Jacksonville. It's Jacksonville because of Trevor Lawrence. I'm interested to have Trevor Lawrence under center, and Lawrence officially declared for the NFL draft. So there's nothing that's going to keep him from going back to school. But I know I'm going to have this guy under center in my first game as a pro football head coach. There's no reason that Urban Meyer would consider anywhere else but Jacksonville. And it's in Florida. Not that far away from Gainesville, where he prospered as the Gators head coach. So, yeah, there's some possibilities. It makes sense. I just don't know if it's going to be a good decision. This copyright and broadcast is authorized under internet rights granted by the World Wide Web and is solely for entertainment of our audience. Any publication, reproduction, or other use of the pictures, descriptions, and accounts of this show without the express written consent of the Parcells Show, JohnPielli.com, and John Pielli LLC is prohibited. Any commercial or other use of the program, such as by charging admission for its showing, is similarly prohibited. So the NHL decides to rename its divisions for a reason that I think all other sports are kind of feeling. And obviously with the pandemic and the NHL resuming playing its postseason last year without any fans, we understand that the National Hockey League, just like the NBA, just like the NFL, just like Major League Baseball, lost a lot of money. And the decision was made to make sure that the NHL season could be played for the safety of its players, the realignment of divisions to eliminate unnecessary travel, to have an all-Canadian division where nobody has to worry about crossing the border over the course of the hockey season. We're all positive things. And as the season gets ready to get started, I think there is some optimism. Teams that are going to be playing each other a lot more often. Teams that aren't playing outside of their divisions for travel purposes. But one of the things that was kind of called out was the fact that the NHL allowed businesses to go in there and sponsor the names of the 4 divisions. Now, a lot of hardcore hockey fans, a lot of traditional hockey fans, a lot of, die-hard, long-term, 40, 50 years, eat, breathe, and sleep nothing but hockey fans were bothered by the fact that they sold out to these businesses to rename their divisions. I actually think it's genius. I actually think it was a great idea, if I'm the NHL, to try to find some way to lessen the losses of a sport. This doesn't hurt anybody. This doesn't impact any players. There's nothing different than anybody that goes on that ice or any coach or any organization or anything. This doesn't impact the players. This doesn't impact the teams. And in all honesty, it doesn't impact the fans. The fact that they sold their naming rights to corporate sponsors was probably one of the best decisions that I've seen a major sport make. They need revenue, just like the NBA needs revenue, just like Major League Baseball and the NFL can use revenue. I understand the contracts, the TV deals in the National Football League lessen the blow when it comes to football teams losing money. But in the end, don't you applaud somebody that's trying to find some way to bring some more money in a sport that's struggling? Because the NHL is going to have a hard time. It's not like the NHL banks on 50,000, people going to their arenas to fill their stadiums. But they bank on, their ticket prices just like anybody else. They need to sell tickets. They're not going to be able to sell tickets. Odds are, I'd be surprised if we see many settings where there's going to be a lot of fans, if any, in a National Hockey League game this year. So you take advantage of cash cows like corporations and give them the opportunity to spend their money on the National Hockey League. And if you find 4 sponsors that care enough about the National Hockey League to basically give you money, I'm totally cool with renaming the divisions for their likeness. I don't care that there's a Discover division and a Honda division and a Mass Mutual and a Scotia Bank division. I give the NHL credit because they found a way to get a whole bunch of money into their sport that they weren't going to get otherwise. Is it going to bother players that they got a sticker on their helmet? No. It's not going to bother them any more than any of the other sponsors that they see on the side of the rink as they're playing hockey. You see a banner or something for some corporation, this is no different. And the NHL did a great job here. And, you think of the commissioner and, the fact that they gave up a whole hockey season and almost gave up another one. The commissioner's growing on me a little bit. Him being behind the divisions set up, the 56-game season where these teams are going to play each other constantly to lessen the travel, and bringing in billions and billions of dollars for these corporate sponsors to name these divisions. I think it's a great job. This is the famous Budweiser beer. We know of no brand produced by any other brewer that costs so much to brew and age. Our exclusive Beechwood Aging produces a taste, a smoothness, and drinkability you'll find in no beer at any cost. So I was thinking about the Heisman Trophy going to wide receiver DeVonta Smith of the Alabama Crimson Tide. And if you think about it, was there more of a dominating player in the sport this year? And obviously, you hear a little more about him. Last couple Alabama games, obviously the game against Notre Dame. And you start to think about the last wide receiver to win the Heisman Trophy. And that was all the way back in 1991. We're talking about 30 years ago. Can you believe, first of all, that 1991 was 30 years ago? After you get over that, which I'm having a hard time, you think of Desmond Howard, the University of Michigan, running back those kick returns. And Desmond Howard had a decent career in the National Football League, but certainly was never a star. He never became Jerry Rice. He was never quite Marvin Harrison. He was never, in the class of a Steve Largent or anybody of that stature. He had a good career. But, I think of DeVonta Smith for this reason. This is a wide receiver that I really think can go top 3 or top 5 in this year's draft. And if you think of Julio Jones, and there's a lot of comparisons to Julio Jones. Julio Jones came out of Alabama. Julio Jones was also a highly touted wide receiver that the Atlanta Falcons decided that they needed to trade up for. And if you look at where Julio Jones was selected, he was selected 6th overall in the 2011 draft, which, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think there's a receiver that's been taken as high since. Now I have to research. I will make an announcement on this program if I happen to be wrong on that. But I believe enough that Julio Jones, being the 6th player taken overall in the 2011 draft, was the highest the wide receiver has gone since. Do I believe that DeVonta Smith is going to go higher? I think he can. And it's weird to look at because if you look at the draft from last year and the amount of wide receivers that were taken in the draft, there were so many really good wide receivers. And so many of them are spread throughout the National Football League. In fact, there probably aren't very many teams that don't have a rookie wide receiver amongst their receiver corps, because there were so many great receivers in this draft. Now, is there a team that feels like it's close enough that it could go out there and take DeVonta Smith, place him as their number one receiver, and take the next steps going forward? Because that's what the Atlanta Falcons did with Julio Jones. Remember, at the time, Julio Jones was playing with Roddy White. Roddy White was the staple, but Julio Jones became an equal right away. You know, a little bit down the road, they kind of did the same thing with Calvin Ridley. But I look at some teams that are picking in the top 5 and ask myself this question. Legitimately, does it make sense to take a wide receiver so early in the draft? If you're the Jets, do you have the balls to take Smith number 2 overall? I think it's pretty interesting. I mean, you look at the teams that are selecting in the order that they're selecting next year. You know, Jacksonville is most likely to take, or actually will take, Trevor Lawrence number 1 overall. I mean, I don't even want to say is likely. They're going to do it. I don't think it's going to change. But you think of the teams, whether it's Miami, who's selecting number 3, that would be a pretty ballsy move if I'm the Dolphins. And think about the Dolphins finishing 10-6 last year. Do you think it would be crazy if they built on the momentum that they have? First of all, they're basically got a pick they've stolen from Houston. You know, Bill O'Brien continues to be the gift that keeps on giving. I think Texans fans are happy that he's out of there. But now the Miami Dolphins own the number 3 pick, a pick that should go to the Houston Texans. And think about it if you're a Houston. Bill O'Brien traded DeAndre Hopkins. I think it would be a great replacement if the Texans were picking number 3 to maybe take DeVonta Smith. Do the Dolphins take this receiver, say, hey, you pair him with Tua Tagovailoa, former teammates in Alabama? Remember, you're thinking of Tua and Judy, or Tua and Henry Ruggs, because they're used to playing together. I mean, it's nice to be able to go to the same school. And what about the Falcons who are picking at number 4? Now, I believe the Falcons got a lot of work to do. They got to decide on their head coach. They have to figure out if Matt Ryan's going to come back for another season. They're in a rough space or rough spot when it comes to the salary cap. Maybe a trade of Matt Ryan could actually help them. And you think of the Bengals. I think the Bengals got enough receivers at number 5. The Eagles, who we just spoke about before, got the number 6 pick. I don't know if they're necessarily going to be going to try to get themselves another receiver. The Lions at number 7. If somehow DeVonta Smith made it to number 7, which I don't think he will, I predict that DeVonta Smith will be a top 6 pick. He'll be taken by, and I'm not going to say the Philadelphia Eagles because I don't think they really need a receiver, but I could see him going to Atlanta. I could see him going to Miami. I could see him going to the Jets. I could see him going to another team that trades up in the top 5 to take DeVonta Smith. But when I think of the Detroit Lions, I think of Megatron, Calvin Johnson, on the Hall of Fame ballot, probably getting in this year. I mean, I can't imagine too many players that are on that ballot that are more deserving than Calvin Johnson. Just a dominating receiver over the handful of seasons he played in the National Football League. How about you go out there and get your next in your mind Hall of Famer? I'd be shocked if we weren't talking about Julio Jones and DeVonta Smith in the same category as being top 6 picks in the National Football League draft. A little recap of the show today, and as always, thank everybody for tuning in. This is the Pass Ball Show, brought to you by JohnPLA.com, by St. Aloysius Church and School in Jackson, New Jersey, by Two Ways one Passion food truck located in Scranton, Pennsylvania. We talked about the Eagles to start the show. And I know there's Eagles players that are pissed off about the way the game was handled. There's fans, whether they're Eagles fans, whether they are Giants fans, whether they're general football fans, that believe that the Philadelphia Eagles lost this game on purpose. And number one, I don't believe it's possible to tank in a National Football League. I've made that statement. I believe it wholeheartedly. And it's going to be very hard for me to back down from that unless I see actual proof and evidence. And I didn't see that. I saw a coach with a thing for his quarterback that's not on the field. Nate Sudfeld, Doug Peterson, I'm sure they're sharing a brain. I'm sure they're coming up with some game planning. I'm sure they built a very good relationship. I don't have a problem with Nate Sudfeld being put on that football field. Was it the worst case scenario? Absolutely. The timing of it, him coming into the fourth quarter of a close game, Sudfeld essentially blowing the game and the Eagles lose, that's the worst thing that could have happened. But number one, I believe that Doug Peterson believed enough in Sudfeld that he could have gotten the job done. And maybe, I hate to say it, people are saying either, really nice things about Nate Sudfeld as far as being a nice guy, or really bad things about him not being any good. Maybe Nate Sudfeld should take some responsibility for his performance in that fourth quarter when he went out on the field. Giants fans upset. I get it. I'm not going to go the 6-10 route. I think that's a lazy take to say, hey, you won 6 games. How are you going to complain about not making the playoffs? Because we all understood the NFC East this year. We all knew it was a garbage division. We all knew that likely a team that was going to win it was going to win the division with a losing record. I was rooting for the Giants to get in at 6-10 because it's something that in the history of the National Football League we've not seen before. But, listen, the Eagles had nothing to play for. The Eagles owed the Redskins nothing. The Eagles owed the Giants nothing. The Eagles owed to themselves the ability to play the game like they wanted to. And I believe if Doug Peterson had this to do over again, he would do it differently. I think he would have played Sudfeld. He could have found a way to get Sudfeld in for a couple snaps at some point this season. The Eagles played in a couple blowouts. Wouldn't have killed him to get him on the field for a couple drives just to get him in there. Maybe this wouldn't be necessary. He could have started him in a game against the Washington football team. He could have. It would have been the evilest thing to do. You want to get him in for a couple drives, things don't go well, you go to Hurts, and the game ends up finishing however it's going to finish. I think he expected more out of Sudfeld, and Sudfeld didn't get the job done. Now it sucks. He hadn't been on the field in a game in over 2 years. But I thought a lot was made out of nothing there. Urban Meyer. I love Urban Meyer as a head football coach. I think he's an all-time great college football head coach. Do I trust him if he's hired by the Jacksonville Jaguars that he's going to be there for a long time? No. Do I believe that there's some smoke to it? Well, I think if there's reports, this isn't like, hey, Bill Cowher is a candidate when you know Bill Cowher is not going to leave the studios of CBS. I think there's something to it. I think Urban Meyer will be open-minded to it. And I think a team like the Jacksonville Jaguars would probably pay for that. Meyer starred as the head football coach of the Florida Gators. Jacksonville ain't that far away. Trevor Lawrence being the number 1 overall pick in this draft by the Jaguars, which is confirmed when Lawrence announced that he will forego his senior season for the NFL draft. Great scenario for Meyer. It bothers me that he hasn't stuck around in any place for a long time. And I'm also concerned about a college coach who is starred in recruiting, who understands that he is the king of the castle when it comes to the school that he is the coach of. How does he go to the NFL when it's not about recruiting? How does he handle the NFL when he's got to play second fiddle to his star quarterback? When he's certainly going to, at some point, be paid 1/3 of the amount of money that his star quarterback's going to be paid. There's going to be a lot of players on that football field that are making more than Urban Meyer if he's the head football coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. And my biggest concern Is Urban Meyer going to stick around long enough to see this through? Because he hasn't done that yet. The all-time great coach that he is, which I believe, all-time great college football coach, one of the top 10 in college football history. Bar none. But I don't believe that he's willing to stick around anywhere for any more than 3 to 5 years. And I could see him having success with the Jaguars. I could see the Jaguars getting into the playoffs, maybe making a run, maybe getting to the Super Bowl. But Urban Meyer's not going to be there for a long time. And that bothers me. Because I think when you're presented a gift, like Urban Meyer's been given, like Bill Parcells was given, and I told you my frustrations with Bill Parcells. You know, you coach for a while somewhere and you're like, I don't want to do it anymore. And then you're like, I'm a coach. I should be coaching. And it's kind of a little carousel where you can't make a decision. You want to coach, but you don't want to coach too long. I don't really like that philosophy. And I see it happening with Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer is going to be back on the sideline somewhere. Whether he takes a college job, whether he decides to take this Jacksonville Jaguars job. Remember Nick Saban, the Miami Dolphins. Remember Bobby Petrino with the Atlanta Falcons. Just because you're a good college coach, and in Saban's case, as well as Myers, you're talking about all-time greats, doesn't mean that's going to transform to the National Football League. Spoke a little bit about the NHL renaming its divisions. I think that was an absolute boom for the sport. I think it's a great job of finding some way to throw in billions of dollars without impacting the teams, without impacting the players, without impacting the fans. And they did an absolute great job. I give back Gary Bettman credit. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I'm destroying Gary Bettman. I thought he was the worst commissioner in all professional sports. He's growing on me. I like how they handled the pandemic. I like what they've done this season about bringing more excitement to the 56-game season and the 4 divisions to, lessen the travel. And I love the fact that they just basically stole billions of dollars from these corporations just to name the divisions and have the hockey players wear a friggin' sticker on their helmet. That's a great business decision. And then we also talked about DeVonta Smith winning the Heisman, and I don't think there's any dispute that he was deserved. 30 years since a wide receiver won the Heisman Trophy in college football, and that was Desmond Howard in 1991. Do I think DeVonta Smith could be a top 5 or a top 6 pick? I believe so. And I say top 6 because Julio Jones was the last wide receiver to go top 6 overall in a draft. Mark my words. Either one of those 6 teams are going to take a wide receiver or somebody's going to trade up to get him. So we got a couple more minutes. We're going to get into some more baseball picks. And I'm kind of lucking out because the way I look at this, if I make a prediction of a player going to a team and I haven't announced it on the show yet and it doesn't happen, then I'm not necessarily wrong. And I'm going to need every break I could get. I would have been wrong on Robbie Grossman. I would have been wrong on Blake Trinan. I would have been wrong on Tommy Kahnle and Michael Wacha. So the first 15 players that I profiled on this show, none of them is signed yet. We're going to add 5 more to the mix right now. Garrett Richards. He's had an up and down career. Obviously, they tried some stem cell treatment to avoid Tommy John surgery, and then he eventually had the surgery. So he's missed a lot of time in the last 5 years or so. I think it will be a great signing for the Chicago Cubs. You lose Yu Darvish via trade. John Lester, I don't think is coming back. I don't know if the Cubs are going to make him an offer. Jose Quintana is a free agent. I think a very buy low and have a great, huge upside investment is Garrett Richards. So I got Garrett Richards going to the Cubs. Brad Hand. You're hearing some speculation that maybe the Mets, the Dodgers, the White Sox, amongst teams that are interested in Brad Hand. I like the connection to the Twins. I like the Twins being very serious this offseason. I don't think they're going to go out there and spend millions of dollars, but they consider themselves a legitimate contender And I think they expect to win the American League Central this year. Brad Hand adds some more stability to their bullpen. Give me Brad Hand, Minnesota Twins. Colton Wong. This is an interesting one because I think when I think of the team, I don't think of them going out there and spending a lot of money. But I also believe that the Oakland Athletics choose to spend wisely. They search for players that are undervalued. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Athletics offered a multi-year contract to Colton Wong. Maybe average annual value a little bit less than what he was going to make in arbitration with the St. Louis Cardinals. And because of that, I think they put a lot of value into that. They're probably going to lose Marcus Semien. According to my predictions, they do. And I think Colton Wong playing second base for the next 3-4 years with the Athletics makes sense, especially if they keep the AAV down. So give me Colton Wong, Athletics. Michael Brantley, solid player. And really has been very underrated over the past 5 years with Cleveland and in the last couple of years with the Houston Astros. I could see the Atlanta Braves jumping in, saying, hey, this is our replacement for Marcell Ozuna. You know, Ozuna essentially replaced Josh Donaldson, even though they played different positions, both on one-year deals. I don't think Michael Brantley will get a one-year deal. I think the Braves will work out a multi-year agreement. And I could see him patrolling left field, balancing that lineup with the Atlanta Braves, who I expect to be a very good team in 2021 and beyond. Didi Gregorius. Now, you're going to be shocked because I'm going to pick a team that I just spoke about. I could see the Athletics jumping in there, giving Didi Gregorius a nice, 15, maybe $10 to $15 million offer for 1 year. And then maybe use him as trade capital if things don't work out. But I think he makes the Athletics better. I think he replaces Marcus Semien, who they'd like to bring back on a 1-year deal. They don't want to bring him back on a multi-year deal, and I think it fits what the Athletics are looking to do. I give them respect sometimes because I think they spend a little more than, the perception is. But I don't think they believe a lot in continuity. And I think at some point, they're not going to be the great team that they've been over the better part of the last couple decades. But I think I like the double play combination of Wong and Gregorius with the Oakland Athletics next year. The final player we're going to profile today will be a reaction off of a prediction that I made earlier. I had JT Realmuto and still have JT Realmuto going to the Washington Nationals. The Philadelphia Phillies are going to be in a need for a catcher. I think they're going to want somebody behind the plate that knows how to call a game. I think they want somebody behind the plate that's going to command respect to the pitchers, whether they're veterans, whether they're younger players. I don't look at Wheeler and Nola as, really old pitchers. They're kind of in the prime of their career. And that's why I think Yadier Molina makes sense for the Philadelphia Phillies. Now, a lot of people can't see Yadier Molina playing for anybody else. Cardinals have dragged this out a little bit longer. And if it takes a 2-year deal to bring back Yadier Molina, I think the Cardinals would have done this already. The Cardinals, for whatever reason, haven't committed that 2-year deal to Yadier Molina. And I think if the Phillies throw in a 2-year deal with an option, especially after losing out on Realmuto, I think it's a great fit. And I think Molina will help both their starters and their relievers. And it's almost like signing a pitching coach too. They brought in a new pitching coach, the guy from Cincinnati. And you got to bring a guy that understands baseball, understands pitching, understands what it is to call a game. I think Yadier Molina would be a very good signing for the Phillies. A Phillies team that I think has enough offense that they could deal with Yadier Molina not being a, over 100 OPS plus type of hitter. This is the Pass Ball Show, as always, brought to you by JohnPLA.com, by St. Aloysius Church and School in Jackson, New Jersey, by Two Ways, One Passion Food Truck located in Scranton, Pennsylvania. We'll be back with you Saturday, and like I said, it'll be a different location. It'll be my goofy face, but who knows what the background will be, as the studio will be undergoing some renovation. God bless you, And as always, I'll see you on the other side.